Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round 7 of the Alfa Romeo Alpha International Championship. Apologies. We're here for the Single Seater Championship. Anyway, we're here at Albert Park for round 7, and so far we're going to go on board actually with Mr. Will Harper, who is dominating this qualifying session. I've been watching the time screen for a little while. His best lap about 1.5 seconds clear, 2.5 seconds clear, in fact, of everyone else according to the time screen that you can see in front of you. And yes, as I mentioned, we're here back at Albert Park following the Formula 1 calendar once again as we get ready for the third round. In fact, I believe it's already race 3 of the 2022's Formula 1 calendar. I certainly can't. And can you believe it? We are over half distance in this calendar as well, as we see Will Harper trying to get some heat into his cars as he heads into Sector 3 in just a moment, heading through Turn 11. Now, of course, we are running the older layout, which has just a couple more corners integrated into it to try and keep you on your toes. So I don't believe that is Turn 11, actually I believe that is now Turn 12. So yes, that is one to watch out for. The changes to the Albert Park circuit, they are quite substantial. There's only a couple of corners that have changed, but it makes a huge difference in terms of corner speed. It's a much more free-flowing circuit now. See a little bit of oversteer coming for Will Harper there. It's all gone wrong at the end of his outlap there. I imagine he might dive into the pits. Yes, he will. The very last corner, when he needed to keep the momentum going, he ended up, he does dive into the pits. He pulls a bit of Lewis Hamilton there, decides to, at the very last second, stay out. And we'll get ready for that outlap, I can imagine, because this lap will be pretty much null and void. A bit of a battle going on in the midfield, currently being led by Paul Brady. Paul Brady on the soft tyre, as everyone in this session is, with Alan Matthews only 700ths of a second behind, and then Paul Milburn only 300ths of a second behind. No, not 300, 3/10 of a second behind, rather. Paul Milburn doing quite a nice job there, actually. Currently, obviously, now having been upgraded to the Pro Division. Our only AROC runner at the moment is Guy Swarbrick and Paul Brady. So Paul Brady doing a nice job up in B3 as well. You can see Alan Matthews finding some improvement there. Goes second fastest with 133.6. Currently on for another lap by the looks of things. He's a little bit further ahead than what the timing tower has told us. Personal best in Sector 1. Looks like he's abandoned this lap. I think no, he hasn't actually. He has carried on. Lost a little bit of time in Sector 2 towards the end of the lap at the moment. Unless a little bit of a delay. There is in fact a bit of a delay. He is on for a personal best in Sector 1. Sorry, the webpage stated personal best in Sector 1. Looks like Will Harper has done a bit of damage there on his outlap once again. So a bit of a disaster on the outlap for Will here in round 7. As we head into Sector 2 with Alan Matthews now back onto the loud pedal for what is effectively a straight in these high downforce cars through Turn 10 to Turn 11. One of the, I believe, the last well, of course, now switched to this Super Formula car, which is much more capable in terms of downforce compared to the Tartus FA1 that we used to run. I'm going to have to stop mentioning the old car once again because it's still a new series in my mind, but we are in fact about 7 rounds in, as I mentioned already, and yeah, already over halfway into this season as we come towards the end of the lap with Alan Matthews now. Quite a tricky sector to navigate, I find, this final couple of corners. When the tyres are at their hottest, they're ready to give up, and you're asking them to enter a huge braking zone and navigate a fairly tight corner, as we see an improvement for Alan Matthews. There he goes, 134.1. That extends his gap to P3 behind. Is that Andrew Brammer or is that Paul Brady? I believe it is Paul Brady. Yes, it is. He's entering the pits now. We'll go on board with Andrew Brammer in one of my favourite liveries on the grid as he looks to carry on his attempt at a fast lap there. Personal best through Sector 1 of 30.0. We'll watch him now as he enters the fast Sector 2. He's looking to improve on a 134.8, so there's a nice bit of a room for improvement in that lap for him there. May as well go on board with Guy Swarbrick. Guy Swarbrick showing his P9 at the moment, but I believe he is P4 in this session as he loses out a little bit of time through Sector 2. Personal best in Sector 1, though quite a competitive Sector 1 at that as well. Let's stay with him as he comes through to the end of the lap now. Heavy braking zone into Turn 13. Very easy to muck it up here. Once again, you can carry a little bit more speed through this corner, but once again you have to stamp on the brakes for the final what's effectively a chicane almost. Really, it's so little distance between the two corners. little bit longer in the Super Formula cars, but if you're familiar with the F1 game, it is quite a short, complex. Going to the crossing line now with Guy Swarbrick. Does he improve? He does improve. He goes P3 in session. P2 on the board here at 133.9. It's a very nice improvement from Guy Swarbrick there. He can be quite happy with the progress he's making so far. We've got 8 minutes to go in this session. He could be on for quite a lossy finish here. But we're going to on board with Will Harper, who's just put an absolute stormer through sector 1 on this lap, a 29.5 rather, as he comes through to the final sector. In sector 1 it was a 29.5. It hasn't updated to tell us what. No, it's not the final sector rather. That was quite similar to the turn 14 complex at the end of the lap there. We're going to go through the second sector. He's lost out a little bit of time at 22.9 there. Still very competitive, a few tenths clear of everyone else, and his personal best is quite competitive in sector 2 clearly because he's near enough matched it. And it's still looking quite racy as he heads through to the final part of the lap now. Back onto the throttle, carrying that speed through once again, just like Guy did a few moments ago, using as much of the track as he does, riding over the curbs into the heavy braking zone. The left-hander there, back onto the throttle. Don't want to overcook it here, as he did on the outlap. Riding through quite conservatively there, playing it careful. Doesn't use too much of the curb on exit, back onto the throttle and across the line in just a moment's time to go. Well, we know he's already going to be on pole there, but does he improve? No, he doesn't. He loses out time in the final sector as well by a couple of tenths there. So the final sector is what he needs now to break away with that gap to the rest of the field there, but he's already should be feeling fairly comfortable, I am sure, with over a second delta to P2 behind. As we'll go on board with, is that Rob Whitney? It is Rob Whitney. Apologies there, Rob. Commentator's curse, very quick to come into effect there. Losing out already onto the gravel as soon as I join you. He was on for quite a nice lap there as well. Currently P9 in the standings, but was on for a 30.3 in the first sector there as we go on board with Willing List. Willing List currently P2 in session. He's broken into the front lines in sector 1 along with Will Harper, so he's looking to be quite racy there, using as much curb as he can through both turn 11 and turn 12. Back onto the throttle, has pretty much matched Alan Matthews' time there, so he's one to watch out for. The battle for P2 should be raging on to the very end of the session. As we come towards the end of the lap now, it is going to be the battle for the ages between these two, I can imagine, because Alan Matthews also on for an improvement in this lap. Has he just outbraked himself into the second to last corner there? We'll find out in just a second as he comes across the line in a moment's time. Back onto the throttle, the long run back down to the straight, exercising all the power available from that turbo V6 engine. He does improve at 133.0, still 9 tenths slower than Will Harper, the current provisional pole sitter there. So those guys do have their work cut out if they want to catch up to Will Harper standing on pole. And we'll exit back earlier on as we go on board with Guy Strawberry, currently P4 in the standings. They're heading through to the final couple of corners on the circuit now. He's personal best in sector 1 and sector 2, so as long as he's back on the loud pedal quick enough, he should be on for quite a nice lap here as he comes down to the start-finish straight here, comes across the line and does make quite a nice improvement, goes third fastest, beating Alan Matthews to P3 with a 133.279 there. Very nice lap from Guy Strawberry there. He's very comfortable here at this Alton Park circuit. He'll be one to watch out for, I imagine, later on in the racing there. Alan Matthews, as he improves, takes P3 back from Guy Strawbrick there, improving to go purple in sector 3. So he's looking quite racy. Clearly not enough tyres or brakes left in that car after that lap, having to dive onto the gravel. Was he trying to pull a Michael Schumacher at Monaco there? I don't think so, but looking quite racy as well. Starting to see those trying to catch up to Will Harper, break away, chip away at their times, taking a couple of tenths here and there. We'll go on board once again, risk it, we'll go on board with Rob Whitney once again. Apologies Rob if this goes wrong, it's not your fault, it will be mine. As we see, he goes for a personal best in sector 1 now, heading through sector 2. Is he? No, he's not. There's an error there on the exit of the corner there, and that brings an end to that attempt in qualifying as Willing Gliss takes pole position away from Will Harper there. We missed that. That came out of nowhere. That didn't look like he was on for a lap to the qualify timing system. And he has just absolutely flown through the lap. A 29.8 sector 1, a 23.2 sector 2, and a 39 flat through sector 3. So Will Harper needs to make up that delta in sector 2. He wants a chance to go. No, he doesn't. He needs to make up the time in sector 3 by the thing where Will is struggling compared to Will in this. He can't keep saying Will there, otherwise that's going to get confusing. Or maybe it won't. Maybe I'll just keep saying Will, and then you'll have no idea who we're talking about. technically I won't be incorrect. I think that will be the strategy there. And within 500ths of a second is Will Harper, so he's looked quite comfortable so far in this qualifying session, but he's going to have his work cut out for him. I'm sure we'll see him leaving the pit lane in a second. As we on cue, pretty much, we see him leaving the pit lane, and we might stay on board with him as we get ready for this outlap. As we see James Atkins, we haven't seen too much from James Atkins this year, but he's on for a fairly nice lap. There goes 36 lap there, beating Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney currently struggling with the car by looking, not able to quite get a lap together. There's such a variety through the years running in circuits that this car, although it is much easier by the looks of things to get used to in comparison to the Tarsus FA1, it is still a very high downforce car, still quite a machine to try and navigate around 13 or 14 or 15 corners of this circuit. And yes, so the variety of circuits quite challenging for the drivers as we go. We'll stay on board with James Atkins, who has been in this qualifying session. I would like to go on board with Rob Whitney, but I seem to ruin every one of Rob Whitney's laps that I do go on board for, so apologies for that, Rob. I'll tell you who we will go on board with. It is Will Inglis, who will go on board with it, because he's brought an end to his next qualifying attempt, and that might prove to be fairly detrimental in his qualifying push. If Will Harper can find that next 5 or 600ths of a second, that could make all the difference. Could see him taking pole position as Will Inglis has lost a qualifying attempt at a crucial point in the session, as we go on board with John Baker. John Baker going for a personal best through Sector 2. We know John Baker has quite a bit of pace underneath him. Can he make the difference in Sector 3 and improve? Currently P7 in the standings. He does improve. Stays P7 though. A 135.4 for John Baker. Now upgraded to the Pro category as well. How long has it been until we have all of that in the Pro run? That is just how good the standard of the field is this year. As we go on board with Will Inglis on his outlap at the moment, I believe Will Harper is on for his fast lap now, so we'll stay on board with him. He's completed a couple of outlaps by the looks of things. A little bit of a lock-up potentially there, maybe outbraking himself as he heads down towards Sector 2 in just a few seconds' time now. Coming towards Turn 8 now. The long sweeping right-hander. This was already a very fast circuit before the speed change. Not much of a change, but still showing that it is a fast circuit. Personal best purple through Sector 1 for Will Harper at 29.5. That is very fast indeed, heading into Turn 9 now. The right-hander runs over the grass a little bit. We'll have to see if that has invalidated his time. I believe it may have done. He's got a little bit of the front wing there as well, that maybe chipping it on the curve ever so slightly. Heads down towards Turn 11 in just a moment's time there. Loses out in Sector 2 as well at 22.9, so still quicker than Will Inglis's best, but nowhere near where he needs to be if he wants to make that time. I think Sector 3 is going to be what makes the difference here as we head into Sector 3 now, heading down towards Turn 14. The right-hander can carry a little bit of speed, a little bit of understeer, looking like it's been dialed into Will Harper's car. Heading into Turn 15 now, that braking zone, which is so easy to get wrong here. And Turn 16, where you want to carry as much speed as possible, but the tyres are screaming no. He heads back onto the loud pedal, down the start finish straight, coming across the line now, and he goes P2 there, losing out big time in Sector 3 actually. Sector 3 was where he lost time at 32.1, is still his personal best. And that is not what Will Harper needs at this point in time. He's going to try and carry on. We'll stay on board with him and find out if he will. Let's see. This will now be Will Harper's final attempt to take pole position back here at Albert Park. He heads down through into Turn 6 and Turn 7 in just a moment's time. Obviously, but the dust being kicked up as well by car in front. That is John Baker out in front. Will he pose a bit of a threat to Will Harper's personal best lap time here? It's not going to be a personal best lap time, but looks at 29.7, near enough his best, but those tyres screaming a little bit as we see him heading through Turn 10 and the car understeering and saying no. That's all those tyres had to give in that qualifying session, and that is an end to Will Harper's qualifying session. So just when it looks so secure for Will Harper, Will Inglis is going to be the one taking pole here at Albert Park for round 7. He's going for a faster one though by the looks of things. Sector 1 and Sector 2 aren't a personal best though, so unless Sector 3 is somewhat magic, he's going to lose out here once again, but it doesn't matter. He's coming across the line now. It is our pole sitter, Will Inglis, coming across the line here at Albert Park at 32.1. Made it happen for Will Inglis. Congratulations, Will. It's an all-Will front-low lockout here at Albert Park. We'll join you in just a few moments' time, ready for race 1 of this doubleheader here in Melbourne. And with just under a minute to go, we are ready to go here at Albert Park. Lined up on the grid, it is Will Harper who sits on pole for some reason. That's interesting. Was Will Inglis's lap invalidated for some reason? Either way, it's no longer an all-Will front row. It is Will Harper sitting in P1, Alan Matthews P2, Andrew Brammer P3, Paul Millman P4, John Baker P5, Rob Brittany P6, James Atkins P7, Will Inglis P8, and Paul Brady P9. I believe we're waiting on Guy Strawbrick as well. All drivers running the soft compound tyre this race, as we've seen for so many races in this year's running with the RSS Formula Supreme. Those soft tyres clearly quite capable of making it towards the end of the race with a decent amount of pace underneath them. But that doesn't matter because it is 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away. Those V6 screaming here off the line now as we see a huge cloud of smoke. Will Harper getting a very good getaway indeed. He pips past Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews kind of cornering him back off the launch there, but heading through turn 1, it is Will Harper who stays in the lead here. In fact, all runs very well paced heading through turn 1. No major incidents by the look of things. Paul Brady dropping back just a little bit under pressure from James Atkins. As we see a move by John Baker under braking, tried to get the dive bomb done there, hasn't quite secured it, and there's contact between John Baker and Alan Matthews as they bash wheels together. John Baker trying to get back on track as early as possible, loses that position out to Alan Matthews. Now under pressure from Paul Millman as well. Paul Millman looks really racing in qualifying, so let's see what he can do, trying to fight his way through the pack running in P6 at the moment. A bit of dust being kicked up there by the look of things. Paul Millman losing out now potentially under pressure from Rob Whitney. James Atkins getting past Paul Brady dropping back to P9 now. Will Harper extending his lead out quite nicely indeed. Already pretty much 2 seconds as we enter sector 2, heading through turn 10 now as well. Here's Will Inglis behind in P2 and Andrew Brammer in P3 as well, so already quite a nice field spread as we head through. The drivers finding a nice bit of space to occupy on track already, although Rob Whitney starting to put the pressure on Paul Millman rather, and John Baker looking like he's got a little bit unsettled heading on the exit of turn 12. Now Paul Millman's going to go off the inside, under braking, try and get the move done, but he outbrakes himself, goes onto the gravel, as is echoed as well by, is that Rob Whitney? It is Rob Whitney, but Rob Whitney is the momentum going a little bit more, takes a position away from Paul Millman, and coming towards the end of the lap now, it is still John Baker in P5. Paul Millman and Rob Whitney making contact through the penultimate corner there. Paul Millman spinning around, now down in last place, and Rob Whitney losing out big time along with him. That throwing Paul Brady up into P7, James Atkins up into P6. And that has not gone well for the bottom half of the field, that sector 3 on that lap there. Will Inglis going purple in sector 3 as he tries to catch up towards Will Harper, and it looks like he is as well. That gap now standing at about 1.3 seconds compared to the 1.8 that it was at the start of the previous lap. That has been quite a chaotic start to this Melbourne, this Albert Park race here, as we see Paul Brady overtaking James Atkins there. It looks like James Atkins maybe outbraking himself there, riding over the sausage curb. That allows Rob Whitney to go into P7, and James Atkins demoted down into P8 rather, as Paul Millman losing out big time there, a few seconds off the back of the field. And Will Inglis still putting that pressure on, but still quite far back. Looks like it's got a little bit more pace underneath it as we head through turn 10, about a second between the two cars now. So that gap slowly but surely getting a little bit closer, so that is one for Will to watch out for. It was, of course, Will Inglis who put the best lap in qualifying. Didn't get the grid start that he wanted, but found his way back up to the top of the order. Only 0.8 of a second separating these two now, so it's going to be quite an intense battle between these two as we head through the race, as we see Will Inglis using as much of the track as he does, riding over the curbs, being careful to not to unsettle the car there, and heading through the final corner now, where it's so easy to come wide if you're too much speed there, and you can scrub off time. You don't necessarily, as we see the push to pass system being used for the first time this evening, outside of qualifying. That push to pass system oh so powerful in these RSS Formula Supreme cars, making about 160 horsepower, maybe 80, correct me if I am wrong, but either way makes a huge difference. Allows the car to the yo-yo effect, bringing right back up to the car in front, as John Baker looks to have made a small error here. As we go on board with him, he reverts back to the pits there, so it must be a fairly substantial amount of damage. He's dropping all the way back down to last position, as there has been a trade for position between Will Inglis and Will Harper here. I don't know if Will Harper ran off the circuit a little bit, or Will Inglis got that move done on merit, but for whatever reason it is now Will Inglis who leads this race. Will Harper about half a second behind already, heading through sector 1, so a big loss at the start of this lap. Andrew Brammer making some nice progress up through the field, and Rob Whitney under pressure from James Atkins as well. as we see James Atkins making a nice bit of progress, in fact, and now really putting that pressure on as we head through the middle sector of the lap for these guys now. John Baker still staying in the pit there, so what a shame to his way through the men like this. Will Harper fighting back as we head down towards sector 3 now. About a second though, looks like he lost out big time through turn 12, the exit of turn 12, losing out there, and now at about a second and a half near enough as we head towards the end of the lap there. So this race not quite going Will Harper's way here. You see, maybe cracking under pressure, maybe that car set up more for a quali run than a race run here, maybe overworking those tyres a little bit. Those tyres are quite durable, but maybe we're seeing a bit of a setup disparity here that's not quite playing into Will Harper's hands. And we go back on board with Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney heading towards the end of the lap now, still under pressure from James Atkins. James Atkins doing a very good job of keeping Rob Whitney honest, as we see Alan Matthews setting a purple sector 3 as well. So with over, or just under rather, 20 minutes to go in this race, we might see Alan Matthews get involved in this battle for the lead of the race as Rob Whitney deploys his push-to-pass system in an attempt to break away from James Atkins behind, but James Atkins still staying on him. Looks like he's got a fairly good run through the exit of the final corner to stay on him that well with push-to-pass employment. As Will Harper looks to be dropping off the back of Willing List now, not quite able to keep on the gearbox of Willing List up in front. Of course, with extra downforce, you have the ill effect of a little bit more dirty air to the car in front, and it gets a little bit harder to follow the car up in front as well, as we see in the speed traps. 280 kilometers an hour on display from Willing's List, Will Harper. Andrew Brammer 285 kilometers an hour, in fact running quite a low downforce setup, and Paul Brady. Paul Brady looking like he's having a few connection issues, which is a shame to see. But yes, all drivers around the 280 kilometer an hour mark, apart from James Atkins and Paul Millman, looking like they're running a little bit more downforce, as we see Guy Swarbrick entering the session, unfortunately not able to join us for the start of the race. So he's a few laps down, but will be good practice for race 2 coming up in a few minutes time, or quite a few minutes time rather. So got plenty to go, plenty of exciting action to go in race 1 this evening. As we go on board with Andrew Brammer. Actually, Andrew Brammer still keeps setting personal best laps, still getting better and better as the race progresses. Looks like he could potentially be catching up with Alan Matthews. Let's see how that plays out later on in the race. Will Alan Matthews be able to focus on the overtake on Will Harper, or will he soon be under pressure from Andrew Brammer behind? As we go on board with James Atkins. James Atkins now about a second behind Rob Whitney. So Rob Whitney doing a very good job of keeping James Atkins behind, still keeping him in his rear view mirror, still aware that he's there, but staying relatively composed, relatively calm, and will be potentially looking forward to a few laps of trying to keep James Atkins behind as we go on board with Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews making up about a half a second this time round, looking quite racy as we head through turn 1, still as we head through sector 1 rather, still looking a little bit down through sector 1 compared to Will Harper, but he can be looking to make some good progress here as he has a few tenths up on him through sector 2 as he heads through the high speed complex here. And there is Will Harper just a little bit up the circuit, about 2 seconds clear. Will Harper starting to drop off in terms of pace now. Maybe that car not very happy in race room, maybe a little bit too much fuel on board compared to his other runners, maybe just a little bit too much downforce, maybe a little bit too much camber, overworking the tyres. Could be a multitude of reasons, but for whatever reason it is Will Harper diving into the pits. We weren't expecting to see that, but that brings a bit of an end to Will Harper's charge in this race. What a shame to see, with such pace underneath him, he's had to bring it into the pits, call it quits so early on. He may be changing instead of putting a medium compound tyre on potentially to try and see it through to the end of this race. What a shame to see such a turning point in this race for Will Harper. Let's see what he can do in race 2 later on. But it is now Alan Matthews up into P2 rather, Andrew Brammer up into P3 rather, onto the podium now, and Paul Brady up into P4. As we see James Atkins and Rob Whitney battling out as we head into turn 1, under braking. Rob Whitney just about winning out there, using the push-to-pass system as late as he dared, keeping the position for how long, because we've got a little braking zone coming up in just a second here as we head up into turn 3. It looks like he's got the move pretty much secured, but all his battling has brought Paul Millman back into contention. Paul Millman now up into P7 owing to the misfortunes of the cars behind. Paul Millman now just a couple of tenths off his battle in front, and all of a sudden it's a three-way battle
for P5 here as we head into second 2 in just a moment's time. John Baker looks like he's had a bit of a disaster here, but speaking of disaster, it is James Atkins under braking there, looks a little bit upset, now dropping down into P7 as well. Paul Millman up into P6 now, trying to put that pressure on to Rob Whitney as we see a trade for positions between Alan Matthews and Andrew Brammer. Wasn't expecting that this early on. Has Andrew Brammer been able to nail a corner or two? Meanwhile, Alan Matthews losing out potentially with a little bit of a mistake now. As we go back on board with Paul Millman heading through the high-speed Sector 2 part of Albert Park. Only a few tenths of a second off Rob Whitney up in front as he's looking for a way pass. Is he going to go down the inside under braking? He thought about it, but very well discerned from Rob Whitney as we head through to turn 14 now. Rob Whitney breaking away a little bit as Alan Matthews entered the pits as well here. What a disaster for him. Are we going back to see all drivers entering the pits? We're still seeing Will Harper and Alan Matthews on the soft compound tyres, so they're not going in for a tyre change rather onto the medium tyres to try and see it through to the end of the race. So I'm not quite sure what those pits are all about as we see Rob Whitney deploying that push to pass system, trying to break away from the car behind. Just that little bit further now, the gap stands at about a second. Meanwhile, Paul Millman under pressure from James Atkins behind here. The gap at about 4 tenths of a second as we see. Was that a deploy of push to pass? I don't believe it was. I haven't seen Paul Millman deploy that system too much so far as we enter the middle stage of the race now. It goes all wrong. Who's that gone wrong for there? I believe that is the car getting out of the way. It is Alan Matthews getting out of the way there by the looks of things. That is very courteous of him. And we see Rob Whitney still under pressure from Paul Millman. Paul Millman able to catch right back up, potentially thinking about a move up or around the outside rather. Goes into turn 10 in just a moment's time. And still the order stays the same. Not a real opportunity to overtake there. There is a bit more of one if you're brave enough through turn 11, although I wouldn't recommend it. You've got a few more corners coming up to make that overtake. I believe in these cars, it looks like the best overtaking opportunity is probably the likes of turn 1 or turn 3. Who's that there who's dropped back? It is James Atkins. James Atkins dropping back. He drops off this fight for P4, unfortunately for him. Soon will be under pressure from Will Harper, our former race leader, our qualifying pole sitter, according to the system at the end of qualifying, is now up into P6. James Atkins, it's all gone wrong for James Atkins there. I'm not quite sure what's happened to him on this lap. I'll be back to see him driving into the pits as well. We'll find out in just a moment's time, but we're going to focus on the battle between Rob Whitney and Paul Millman. It is still Rob Whitney who leads this battle in P4 at the moment as we head into turn 1, using that push to pass system once again. James Atkins getting the overtake done on Alan Matthews and doesn't opt to dive into the pits. Back into P7 for James Atkins, but Alan Matthews does opt to dive into the pits there. So a bit of a disaster in terms of race strategy here at race 1 in Albert Park. Hopefully this will get rectified before race 2. I'll try and find out what's happening in the intermission because it's a bit of an odd one here in this race. Meanwhile, we haven't focused on him too much since he got the overtake done on Will Harper. Winning this leads this race by about 15 seconds, doing a very nice job, looking very comfortable in the lead of this race at the moment. And Andrew Brammer looking very comfortable in P2 as well, about 15 seconds clear once again. And speaking of 15 seconds, we've got another 15 seconds between Paul Brady and Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney doesn't, unfortunately for him, have a 15-second gap though. Rob Whitney looking a little bit under pressure from Paul Millman behind. That gap extending just a little bit now standing at about a second, which will be blessed relief for Rob Whitney at this point. He spent so many laps under pressure from cars behind. I'm sure he'll be quite happy with about a second gap, although he wishes it could be more. We don't know. We're all ready for a bit more racing action here at Albert Park, and if it doesn't come in race 1, which I'm sure it will come in the reverse good race in just a few minutes time. As I just want to see, yes, the likes of Alan Matthews, Guy Strawberry and John Baker still lapping, getting that all-important practice in, ready for race 2 coming up in just a few minutes time, as I have just mentioned. Race 2, of course, the reverse grid race, that will mix up the order a little bit and allow the faster drivers to have a few more overtaking opportunities and work their way up through the order a little bit more. Having that challenge will be quite interesting to see, but Paul Millman still cashing up to Rob Whitney now within a second of him as we head into second 2. Has stayed right on the rear wing of Rob Whitney up in front. Rob Whitney doing a very nice job up into P4. Qualifying was a bit of a disaster for him. It didn't look like it was coming together, but now he's looking fairly comfortable up into P4, as I mentioned. Only, well, I say only, about 15 seconds off the podium, but who knows what could happen. It's already been a bit of turmoil here in race 1. Anything could happen at this point. We could see James Atkins leading the race in just a few laps time. You never know. But Paul Millman's still putting that pressure on then as we enter the... and it has gone wrong for Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney's dropped back down there. Outbraked himself potentially. Has to go into the tyre wall. He's now down into P6 all of a sudden. Will Harper, having pitted, is now up into P5 already. Paul Millman now up into P4 as well. So Paul Millman putting that pressure on, will be fairly happy with that. As he now has a fairly comfortable way down to the podium if he so chooses. He's got about 10 minutes to try and make some ground, but he's under pressure from Will Harper, just a few seconds behind. As we get ready to start the next lap now with Paul Millman, Will Inglis just Will Harper rather about a second and a half behind. Let's see what their personal best laps are in comparison to each other. Will Harper's personal best are 33.4, Paul Millman's a 36.1, which was that previous lap. Paul Millman responding to the pressure from behind then. But for how long can he keep this up? I don't think he can keep it up for too long, because Will Harper now within 0.6 of a second of the car up in front. Paul Millman looks like he's out braking himself just a little bit as we head down towards sector 2 in just a moment's time. With that gap getting closer and closer by the corner. Will Harper already looking like he's setting himself up for a move under braking, potentially exploring the limits of the track to see where an overtaking opportunity arises. As we head down to sector 2 now, they are side by side. Will Harper looking very racy on the exit. He's got the inside line, but very well defended from Paul Millman. But for how long? He ran a little bit wide, did Paul Millman, and now Will Harper takes the position up into P4 using that push to pass system and is clear of Paul Millman at this point as we head down towards turn 10. That gap already at about 0.8 of a second, and Will Harper is getting ready to head through sector 3 with little competition unless Paul Millman can fight back, unless he's preserved those highs, preserved that push to pass system, and is ready for a charge down toward the start finish straight. But I believe Will Harper has his move secured. So it looked so wrong for him at the start of this race, but Will Harper still on for a nice points haul here in race 1 of round 7. Although it's not the race that he would have wanted, having sat on pole for so long in qualifying, he can be fairly happy with the points haul into basket, and this will work wonders for him in the championship standings, as of course we have the absence of Matt Daly and Colin Kneath. As it is still Will Inglis who leads this race and heading down through turn 10, turn 11 as well, using that push to pass system on the exit of turn 11. That seems a bit of favour for the drivers here in race 1 actually, so maybe that is where the system is most advantageous. Leading by about 18 seconds now, so extending that gap, and now as the fuel load starts to get lighter, setting a purple sector 2 at 23.1, that's a few tenths of a second clearer than anyone else at the moment, so he's looking fairly racy. And looking like he could be securing a victory furthermore, although don't count out a small error as we've seen for so many drivers in this session. Maybe a bit of a unexpected pit stop as well could see him come to the end of a charge for the race victory, although that personal best lap, in fact that fastest lap of the race, doesn't look like he is showing any signs of stopping. A 32.5 on the previous lap for Will Inglis. Those tyres looking like they are still in a very comfortable window, and of course that fuel load getting lighter as well, as we now have less than 10 minutes remaining in this race 1 already. And it looks like Rob Whitney under pressure from James Atkins once again. We've seen this before. James Atkins, it all went wrong for him just a few laps ago, but he's ready for a charge once again. He looks like he's going to be trying to get that move done for P6 in the upcoming turn 13. Can he get the move done on the braking from that far back? I don't think he can, but the pressure is certainly on now for Rob Whitney as he heads through the final sector of this lap. Potentially thinking about a move down the inside. No, he doesn't. That's not a very common overtaking opportunity. This is a little bit more common, but not too common as we head through the final corner now. And it looks like James Atkins has dropped off just a little bit now, dropping back a further few tenths. So maybe overworking the tyres a little bit, but this will help his charge now as he uses that push to pass system heading into turn 1. Is he going to go for a move up the inside? No, he isn't. Rob Whitney's going to go for a very adventurous line through turn 1, riding over the grass. If we have stewards, I imagine they'll be thinking a little shall we say, less favourably upon that one, but it was all in the efforts of defensive drive here, as we see a very good defensive drive on from Rob Whitney here as he tries to keep James Atkins at bay, but for how long can he do it? Let's compare their previous times. It looks like James Atkins certainly has the upper hand. A 35.8 is James Atkins' personal best. A 37.5 is Rob Whitney's. On previous lap time, James Atkins wins out by about 3 to 4 tenths of a second as we head through down towards Sector 2 now, heading up to the infamous Turn 10. And it looks like Rob Whitney able to keep James Atkins at bay as Paul Millman gets the overtake done on Will Harper. What's happened there? Will Harper dropping back a little bit potentially now by about a second. If we compare the previous lap time, it looks like Will Harper certainly had the upper hand, so I think a bit of a mistake has come into play there. It's still Rob Whitney who leads this duo now as we head through Turn 11 up into Sector 3 in a moment's time, but he certainly is under pressure. James Atkins right on that rear wing, looking at a move out around the outside potentially. No, he can't quite make it done. He's going to go very late on the brakes there, nearly ended up on the grass, did briefly, but able to carry on, dropping back a couple of tenths as a result of that though. Heading into the penultimate corner now, echoing his every line through this complex of corners and back onto the loud pedal now. Let's see who uses that push to pass system. Rob Whitney likes that push to pass system down the start finish straight. I don't think he's using it yet. He isn't, but James Atkins is. Is he going to go for a move up the inside in a few seconds time? I don't think he is. He isn't. He's going to stay right behind him, echoing his every move, staying in that slipstream then as we enter the final 5 minutes of this race. Nice Robert second a purple Sector 1. Meanwhile, those practice laps have paid dividends a few laps down there. He's looking quite confident as well. My voice is starting to go. It's been a very exciting race one here at Alfa Park, and I've just enjoyed a weekend of commentating also real life racing in Landau as well, so my voice isn't too happy with me at the moment. As we see, looks like Rob Whitney is still able to keep James Atkins behind just at the moment. Will Harper now getting back past Will Harper. Looks like that was on merit as well, which is good to see. James Atkins right on the gearbox of Rob Whitney as he looks for a move, goes for a switchback around the outside, but Rob Whitney outbrakes himself, and that is exactly what James Atkins was trying to force there. A little bit of pressure from behind has forced an error from Rob Whitney, and James Atkins promoted up into P6 now. Rob Whitney loses a position there. What a shame to see such a defensive drive come to an end like that. A commendable effort from Rob Whitney there. For so long in this race he's been on the defensive, and he can be fairly happy with what has been an impressive drive, even if he loses that position there. Well done, Rob. And it is still Willie Bliss in the lead at this point in time, about 25 seconds clear of the rest of the field now. He has absolutely dominated this race. He showed his true hand here when he pipped Will Harper to pole with his lap time that for some reason didn't apply to the grid. By a few hundredths of a second there, he took pole away from Will Harper and has shown why, currently leading the section by about 25 seconds. As we're on board with Will Harper, former race leader, former pole sitter, now in P4, about a minute down from the race leader, can still be fairly happy with the points haul that he should be taking away from this weekend, as my voice really is starting to give away now. Apologies for that, folks, but we'll stay on board with Will Harper as he heads through the lap. Doesn't look like he's quite been able to set the electric lap that we saw from him in qualifying. The best out of the session is still that winless 132.5. That's about a second clear of anyone else's personal best lap. He's absolutely flying, is winless up in front. Has really found his rhythm around this Alfa Park circuit, as a few drivers have. Guy Swarbrick looking very competitive here as well. He's looking like he's really finding his groove in this car this year, and this track has certainly highlighted that, as we have just over 2 minutes to go in this race now. So it seems to be settling just a little bit, not too much though. I wouldn't want to say that too soon. But after 20 minutes of running, the drivers now finding their place on the circuit to occupy, now looking a little bit more settled and looking fairly comfortable as well, especially the likes of Willie Bliss, who's just gone purple in Sector 2 with 23.14 Willie Bliss that time around, using that push to pass through Turn 11, so clearly feeling very confident that the rear end is going to grip up, using that extra power available to him in the sweeping right-hander as we come towards Sector 3 now, the final part of the lap. Once again, we might stay on board with Willie Bliss to show
how it's done there. The previous lap at 1:34. Let's see how that improves for him with this purple sector 2 as well. He's got a 1:32.5 to beat. Is his best lap. It is the best lap of the race. Can he do it this time? I'm not entirely sure. Let's see what happens through sector 3 as he comes across the line in just a moment's time. He does improve a 1:32.39 going purple in sector 3 as well. So that fuel load getting really quite light now. Maybe he'll have to start conserving for the next, for the final couple of laps as well. Because those tyres won't be entirely happy with him, but the fuel load clearly quite light in Winglis's car. Not to take away from the talent on display here, clearly an immense amount of talent demonstrated with the car leading the race at the moment. But that field now having finally spread out just a little bit after such close racing for so long. We'll do a bit of a rundown as we come towards the end of this race 1 of this double header. Now it is William Bliss, as we've just been on board with for a lap, is currently leading this race in P1. A few seconds behind is Andrew Brammer in P2, and with a comfortable gap once again it is Paul Brady coming towards the end of the lap now as he comes across the line. Let's see if he improves on a personal best. I don't think he will unless he's got something to claw back in sector 3. No, he doesn't. It is P3 for Paul Brady then. Will Harper, after leading this race and climbing his way back through the field using that push to pass system at the moment, he might be on for a quick lap as he tries to maybe he salvaged a little bit of tyre life here and wants to try and take that fastest lap away from William Bliss as we have only 10 seconds left on the timer. But it is Will Harper in P4. Paul Millman then in P5 at the moment, a few seconds down there. James Atkins using that push to pass system as well, currently in P6, and Will Harper has got past Paul Brady. What's happened to Paul Brady there? I think I saw a glimpse of his car coming off, but wasn't entirely certain. The car looking quite eager to rotate, but I will tell you one thing, there's quite a bit of ping on Paul Brady's connection there, and we're seeing that in the form of some lag by the looks of things. What a shame to see his race come to an end like this potentially. But we'll do a quick rundown now. Paul Millman P5, James Atkins P6, Rob Whitney P7, Alan Matthews P8, Guy Swarbrick P9 and John Baker P10 as we go back on board with Will Inglis for what will be the final time this evening in race trim for him, apart from race 2. Obviously race 2 coming up in just a few moments time as we head through sector 2, and it is now Will Inglis now 40 seconds clear of P2 owing to Paul Brady's error there. That little issues there, rather that means Will Harper back on the podium there, which I'm sure he will be fairly happy with, as we see a bit of a blink of the push to pass system as we head through the fast sector 2 now. A bit of lap traffic to contend with, which he does so with ease. Getting out of the way nicely is Rob Whitney. Although he fancies a bit of a race by the looks of things, although it looks to be fairly settled at this point as we head into turn 11 now, through the long left-hander followed by the long right-hander. Not that long, but very fast indeed, using that push to pass system on the exit of the corner now, heading through the final corner of sector 2. I believe it is already actually sector 3 by this point, I should know that, but we're going to head through turn 14. And after a domination in qualifying that didn't look so clear at the start of the session, he's heading through the final corner now, having led this race so long. He dominates race 2 and coming across the line just a few seconds, by about 45 seconds, it is Will Inglis who comes across the line to take the race victory here in race 1. Congratulations to Will Inglis for a dominant drive, and very well done indeed. Andrew Brammer then will be coming home in P2, about 45 seconds down, so Will Inglis really leading the pack here, as quite an interesting line taken by Andrew Brammer there. We saw that, Andrew. You're on camera for that one, so stewards, if they existed, might have something to say about that one as we head through the final part of the lap in just a few moments time. But it is Andrew Brammer who will be coming home in P2, Will Harper P3, Paul Brady P4, Paul Millman P5. Will there be a change in that position potentially as we have some victory donuts from Will Inglis? Are they premature, Will? There's still a few cars navigating the circuit. I wouldn't be entirely comfortable doing that so far, although it doesn't matter to you at this point. You've had quite a nice victory there indeed. We'll go on board with Andrew Brammer as he comes across the line to take P2, second spot on the podium for Andrew Brammer. Very well deserved, very quiet, very nice race from him. That's exactly what you want sometimes, as Paul Millman recovers his way through the field to take P3. Very nice effort from him using that push to pass system to bring him across the line. P3 for Will Harper. Paul Brady coming across the line then in just a moment's time. It will be P4 despite that bit of lag he was suffering at the end of the race. Very well done job to him there to take P4. Paul Millman taking P5 as well. A little bit further down the track, it is James Atkins who eventually got the overtake done on Rob Whitney after a very nice battle indeed between the two drivers. Comes down to take P6 here in race 1, and we'd wait for Rob Whitney to come across the line, taking home P7. A very nice
race indeed. Some interesting battles developing there. That race going through quite a few phases as well, as we see Willie's List obviously celebrating that victory with some donuts, which is nice to see. And we'll be joining you in just a few moments time, ready for the reverse grid race 2 coming up in just a few moments time. So don't go anywhere. See you in just a second.
And welcome back to the action here at Albert Park, ladies and gentlemen. Number one, hopefully my voice will hold through. Number two, hopefully the server will hold through as well, having a couple of issues joining, but I think we're all good now with just over 30 seconds to go until lights out. We have, it is, by the looks of things, John Baker sitting on pole position, Alan Matthews in P2. I can't quite make out who that is in P3 because the timing system has updated, but I can tell you it is Andrew Brammer in P4 as well. No, that looks to be P6. Someone's missing from the grid there. I just want to give a quick shout out to Steve Knight. Would like to be joining us, but unfortunately looking a little bit unwell. So get well soon, Steve, and hopefully you'll be joining us soon. But hopefully you're enjoying the racing here at Alfa Park as well, as we hear the revs rise for the final time this evening on the launch. It is 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away. John Baker getting a very nice launch away there, but being clawed back by Alan Matthews by the looks of things. Potentially, no, it is in fact going to be Rob Whitney into the inside line there, getting very nice move done, sneaking up through the very small gap that was left for him. Currently leading this race, and Alan Matthews dropping back just a little bit, but Rob Whitney soon under pressure from John Baker from behind here as we head up into T3 rather, and there's contact, there's big contact between that is Will Inglis, and I'm not quite sure who else. I believe that might have been John Baker, but John Baker, if it wasn't him, looking very unsettled as well, making contact with Will Harper for good measure as well. Will Harper able to carry on though. Guys walking up into before able to join us at the start of the race this time, but running a little bit wide there, spinning around, collecting who is out there. I believe that is John Baker. He's collected. What a shame to see the race make such a start. The guys now back down into last, as it is Alan Matthews who leads this race, getting the position back from Rob Whitney, soon to be under pressure from Will Harper potentially as this race carries on. Whitney Bliss, the one who certainly had the pace in the race, has dropped all the way back down into P6, but let's see what he can do throughout the rest of the race as Will Harper finds a way past Rob Whitney now, and it is Rob Whitney down into P3, but has a nice few seconds behind him to potentially make up some good ground and fight for this podium later on in this race. As we see James Atkins putting the pressure on Paul Brady up in front. Paul Brady all went a little bit wrong for him in race 1. He certainly has the pace, but right at the very last moment he lost that spot on the podium and gets a big lock-up heading into the penultimate corner. James Atkins wasn't expect that. There's contact between the two. Paul Brady losing out there by the look of things. A little bit of damage to his rear wing, and damage to both the cars from the back. But that has promoted Windsor back up into P4. So when it all looks like a little bit lost for him, he's all of a sudden not too far off the pace of lead, less than 10 seconds away, and with his pace he can certainly be catching back up. As we see, there's only the leaders are pretty much side by side, in fact, as a very aggressive switchback from Alan Matthews there on the defensive drive there as Will Harper looks to move off the inside. Only a few tenths of a second separating these two drivers as we head into sector 2 in just a moment's time. And my voice is just about holding up here. It seems fine. It's been about 3 or 4 days since that move there, but that move there is certainly more interesting than what I was about to say, my own personal life story. A big lock up, the car looking like it's getting a full switch around, but the position, the order doesn't change. But I mentioned it was only about 3 days ago. My voice has been fine ever since. A little bit now. And there's a big amount of oversteer for Will Harper. He ends up in a wall. Huge amount of damage to his rear wing there, and that will surely be a bit of a downer on his charge in this race. We've seen this car seems to be very competitive, even with a bit of aero damage. I believe the damage is slightly turned down, but that is not what Will Harper needed. That is certainly not the charge back to the leader's race that I was potentially expecting to see later on. What a shame to see his race turn around on his head so early on. As we see Alan Matthews setting the fastest lap now heading into turn 1. A few seconds, nice gap for him. He can be fairly happy with how this race has started for him. And he won out after all the chaos after the start of the first 4 or 5 minutes of this race. As we see, by the looks of things, another collision for Will Harper, this time in the pit lane. I'm going to make you suffer through it and watch this, Will, unfortunately, because it is a bit of an odd one. What a shame to see his charge in this race come to an end there. What could have been still quite a nice weekend in terms of him, in terms of his position in the championship standings, has quickly come to an end here. P3 in race 1 on what looks to be a fairly,
lower position in this race unless he's got the pace to climb a few positions back. And who knows? We saw quite a few changes in race 1. It wouldn't be too far of a stretch to imagine the same thing to happen in race 2 as well. But speaking of not too far, it is willingly not too far away from Rob Whitney, heading around turn 10 now, putting that pressure on, about half a second behind, but is in that slipstream which matters in these cars down the straight. Has to push the pass as well, as we see him carrying a little bit more pace through turn 11, turn 12 there, losing out a little bit though because he had to run over the grass, wasn't expecting the slower car up in front. As we see Rob Whitney now riding over the grass as well, and all of a sudden it's a three-way battle for the lead by the looks of things. It all went wrong for Alan Matthews. Willing List now leads this race. A bit of a switch around there. Rob Whitney back up into P2 as we head through the penultimate corner and get ready to start another lap. Now within half a second is Rob Whitney. Can Rob Whitney keep Alan Matthews at bay? We've seen Rob Whitney and Alan Matthews battling out before. Rob Whitney using that push-to-pass system then to try and make sure that Alan Matthews stays behind, but Alan Matthews deploying the same system. Rob Whitney in the slipstream using the push-to-pass, has the extra speed, scrubs off a little bit of it heading into turn 1. Using a little bit of understeer there to keep that speed at bay. I'm not sure that was intentional though. Andrew Brammer looks to be having a bit of a nightmare by the looks of things. Currently in P8, has front wing and rear wing damage as well, so not the race that he wanted. Willing Bliss then, having led race 1 for so long, finds himself all of a sudden in the lead of race 2 as well, about a second clear of the car behind. But this is exactly where he needs to be if he wants another charge for the victory in race 2. Going so well for him so far. The race really turning on its head at the end of the last lap. Guy Swarbrick going purple in sector 1. Guy Swarbrick seems to be a bit of a sector 1 specialist. It is to be said, 29.9 through sector 1, a 34.1 is his best in the race so far. The best lap of the race going to Willing Bliss, our current race leader, at 33.2, so not far off the best that we saw in race 1 as well, with a full fuel load, only about a second off as he's using that push-to-pass system now to break away from the rest of the field, already about 3.5 seconds clear. Someone who isn't 3.5 seconds clear though is James Atkins from Paul Brady. Paul Brady under pressure here in race 2, fighting for P4 at the moment. It's not quite the position he was fighting for in race 1. Of course, race 1 really not going his way at the later stages, but here is where he can make amends. Here's where he can get some points on the board in race 2, but he's going to have to work for it if he wants to, because James Atkins is making sure that doesn't happen, as Willing Bliss very nearly into the 32 second region on that lap. Doesn't quite make it out, a 33.09 that round on Paul Brady. Is struggling with a little bit of lag by the looks of things. Contact between the two cars, what a shame to see these technical issues for Paul Brady, compromising what I imagine would have otherwise been a fairly electric drive. Paul Brady certainly knows what he's doing behind the wheel of one of these things, as James Atkins looking like he could be making a move through the down the inside rather. No, he thinks better of it. It's a little bit too far back for that move to be made, as Willing Bliss takes that purple sector 1 away from Guy Swarbrick, a 29.7 for Willing Bliss on this current lap. We might join him in just a second to see how this lap progresses. Usually we see at this point in the race, kind of this middle section, not too much overtaking happens. There's not too much pace in the cars either, as the tyres aren't fresh, but the fuel load is still quite high. But Willing Bliss seems to be entirely ignoring that and be looking ready to go quite pacey indeed. As we head into sector 2 now with these two cars. It is Paul Brady still leading this duo then, but a bit of lag has brought James Atkins right back into play. So Paul Brady is doing an excellent job of keeping up in front if the lag really is affecting him this much in the cockpit, although we do know it is quite difficult for cars to follow with a bit of lag as his contact into the cars. James Atkins getting a little bit of front wing damage as a result of that, as I was mentioning. Right to the precise time, it is quite difficult to follow a laggy car. Not the fault of Paul Brady, of course, but yes, it can make him quite difficult. As we see, a 32.6 for Willing Bliss on that previous lap, then he is really settling into his groove now in the lead of the race. This will be an excellent race in terms of the an excellent weekend rather in terms of the championship standings for him as we head into sector 2 in just a few moments time once again. So then, Will Harper, we saw him make a charge through the order in race 1. Has that quite happened yet in race 2? Well, with just over 15 minutes to go, that is not the case. It seems running a little bit wide there, a little bit of understeer in his car. We saw this in qualifying a bit as well, actually. Maybe Will Harper's driving style or his setup just taking a little bit too much life out of these tyres. We know he's very pacey in this car indeed, so it's not down to just his driving style, potentially a combination of style, setup, potentially track as well. But it is still Will Inglis who leads this race at the moment by about 10 seconds already. That gap building up nicely. His current pace is about 5 seconds clear of anyone else on track. We are currently in that lull, that mid-race lull, where some drivers are in the 140s, 140.8 and 140.0 rather, and 140.3 for Paul Brady and James Atkins respectively. But yes, it is Will Inglis who by far leads this race in terms of pace at the moment. As we were going on board with Paul Brady and James Atkins, as Paul Brady still under pressure from James Atkins at the moment, and Paul Brady doing an almighty job of keeping that car behind. Will this be James Atkins' opportunity? No, doesn't like it will be. He might have to wait for that. Or no, there's been big contact between the two. Both cars spinning around. Who can get back onto track as quickly as possible? It looks to be Paul Brady able to carry on a little bit quicker. James Atkins losing out big time there. And that is a shame for him, because this is of course the battle for the AM race. Paul Brady leading that battle then with the lapped car of Guy Swarbrick behind. Yes, Paul Brady leading that AM race at the moment then, so that battle was for the lead, so it is a shame to see it come to an end like that. Both cars heading down the start-finish straight, using that push-to-pass system. Who wins out? It looks like it's going to be Paul Brady. I don't think Guy's going to fight this too much, although maybe Guy not quite expecting to see his car there, maybe owing to the lag there, but quite an aggressive cutback from Paul Brady there. As we see Alan Matthews certainly staying on the pace with Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney doing a nice job of leading this, well not leading, but staying high up in the order in the pack there. In P2 at the moment, has been in P2 for quite a few laps now. This is exactly the type of race that he needed in his fight in the championship standings in the pro running, of course, for Rob Whitney. About a second and a half clear of the car behind at the moment, so if he stays here, I know commentators Curse and Rob Whitney certainly don't seem to go well together, and I apologise for that, Rob. You're doing quite a nice job here in race 2, so I'm going to have to give you a bit of camera time. Hopefully you can understand that, I am sure you can. As we'll go on board with Will Inglis. Will Inglis doing a very nice job in the lead at the moment then. Folks, just giving you a little bit of a break, or not so much giving you a little bit of a break, giving my voice a little bit of a break as it recovers ever so slightly. And in terms of championship standings, this race, this weekend rather, will prove very beneficial to Will Inglis, as we see Alan Matthews getting it a little bit wrong, dropping back through the order, or dropping back in terms of pace there, riding over the curve. As we see the driver start to find a nice gap, a nice part of the circuit as well. Right, Alan Matthews struggling with that car a little bit, I think. Running quite wide in a few of the corners now, those tyres not entirely comfortable as we enter the halfway stage in this race. The fastest lap of the race, they're going to Mr. Will Harper. I haven't referred to you as Mr. Will Harper this weekend, so I apologise for that. Will 32.5, so echoing the previous personal best lap of, or the fastest lap of race 1 for Will Inglis, I believe that was a 32.3. So Will Harper rather. There's too many Wills getting quite close to that. In terms of the championship standing then, it is currently led by Colin Cleave, who is absent from here. So if Will Inglis keeps this up, he's looking very comfortable indeed in the championship standings if he takes this second race victory this evening. Alan Matthews in P3 at the moment, and Will Harper P4. So what could have been for Will Harper, he could have made a very nice progression through the order indeed, but that hasn't. That doesn't look like it's going to be the case, unfortunately, for him. Guy Swarbrick leading the AM running then, followed closely behind by John Baker, only 3 points separation to John Baker, obviously looking like he'll be a little bit more comfortable in the standings at this point in time, as Steve Knight, as we mentioned already, currently not here with us, unfortunately. P3 in the standings, 136 points on the board for him. You're going to be under pressure, Steve, from Paul Brady. Paul Brady now in P5, I was about to say P4, but Will Harper has got the move done on Paul Brady. Paul Brady now once again under pressure from James Atkins. James Atkins has caught back up to the back of Paul Brady. So, Steve, you watching from home here, you're currently rooting for James Atkins, the car behind, and it is certainly going your way, because on the exit of the corner, James Atkins gets a much nicer run, both using the push-to-pass system. James Atkins up into P5, going to have the inside line as well. Very nice position to defend from, and it is P5 for James Atkins as we start the next lap there. So, well done, Steve, that one was for you. James Atkins then currently in P5 there, with 100 points on the board. As we see Paul Brady getting moved back under braking, actually, as they are side by side, banging wheels together. Both cars able to stay on the circuit there, but James Atkins losing out under braking there as Paul Brady very sneakily just about fit his car into that gap to take P5 back once again. This battle could go on to the very end of the race. We've only got 10 minutes to go here this evening. So let's see how this battle develops, as it looks like James Atkins carrying a little bit more pace as we head up towards turn 10, turn 9, turn 10 there. Looked like on the exit he was going to be ready to fight back, loses out on the braking and perhaps for the brakes in his car, as my voice is certainly going now. Apologies for this, folks, if the pauses become a little bit more frequent, but we're going to stay on board because I certainly want to commentate on the exciting action that is going on here. Only 4 seconds per second separation of the two cars as we head through turn 11, turn 12, and it looks to be that gap is building up just a little bit more now about half a second. Of course, still quite a small gap, but that half a second will feel like absolute miles as we head through the final sector now, with James Atkins trying to get that move done. As we head through the penultimate corner, James Atkins seems to be quite frequently opting for a wider line on the entry to the penultimate corner. Maybe that is just seeking to get his car around that corner, where it made all the difference on the exit of the final corner. Looks like Paul Brady has nailed it this time around. James Atkins catching a little bit with the push-to-pass system, but it's too little too late. That looks like it's going to be very brave. No, it's not. A little bit of a lock-up from Paul Brady there. That brings James Atkins back into the charge. It's still Paul Brady who leads. I was about to say this duo, but it's a trio all of a sudden, because out of nowhere Paul Millman is back in the fight. The battling between the two cars has slowed them up ever so slightly, and Paul Millman wants a piece of this action. Purple through sector 2 for Paul Millman on the previous lap. Speaking of purples, it is Will Harper. Purple in sector 1 as well, 29.6, very competitive from Will Harper last time around, and Paul Millman finds a way past, as you can see in the rearview mirror there, finds a way past James Atkins that time around. Will it be Paul who finds a little bit of ease trying to get past Paul Millman? Will be Paul Millman who puts on a little bit of pressure on Paul Brady up in front of him. Out of the Pauls and the Wills this evening, as there's lag between the two cars there that really spits Paul Millman off. What a shame to see his race get affected like that. Of course, no one's fault. A little bit of lag, a little bit of technical difficulties there for cars involved. What a shame to see what could have been quite a nice overtake come to an end. That can't be helped. Though, as we see, Will Inglis still leading this race at the moment with under 10 minutes to go now. As Will Harper setting those fast laps then, the 32.3 that time round. Looking very competitive indeed. It's just a shame it's so, well, I say so, it's a little bit further down the order in comparison to his main rival in qualifying, Will Inglis. We haven't seen an on-track battle between these two drivers. It would have been very nice to have seen that, because I imagine it could have been quite an exciting one. As we see Will Inglis, yes, setting that best lap of the race with 23.1 sector 2, not his best. In the 22s occasionally has been Will Harper, but there's still plenty of time in that lap. If he can get a little bit more fuel out of the car, if he can preserve the size a little bit, he can maybe focus his sights on a bit of a fastest lap charge. I don't believe, I should know this, I don't believe we award a point for the fastest lap of the race, but just as a bit of a flex of his muscles, he might choose to go for that in the later stage of this race. But I tell you who is looking very close indeed. It is Rob Whitney and Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews now up into P2. He's got the move done on Rob Whitney by the looks of things, and Alan Matthews has yes, done a very nice job to, after so many laps, get that move done. Here's Rob Whitney now in P3, potentially thinking about a move around the outside there. Goes a little bit wide, riding onto the grass as the result. Not too much, so doesn't lose out too much. Able to carry on, only a few tenths of a second behind. We know Rob Whitney can battle, can fight in traffic. Let's see how we can continue that tradition as we enter the final few minutes of this race on this weekend now. Will Harper then in P4 at the moment, using that push to pass system, heading down the start finish straight. Currently in P4, as I've already mentioned, now enters the 22s in sector 2, a 22.9 that time round. Unfortunately for him, not a personal best, not a fastest lap on the race. Still, that stands as the 32.3. Rob Whitney now dropping off the back of Alan Matthews just a little bit now, but he's still got plenty of margin to the car behind, which is Will Harper, so could still be on control indeed. As we see, Will Harper looks like he's got a little bit wrong there. Apparently a crash with the environment, according to the timing system, but is still carrying on regardless. Has, by the looks of no aero on his car at all. So if that is the case, he's doing a very nice job at the moment, as Rob Whitney seems to be struggling with his internet by the looks of it, doing half a second's worth of ping. Unfortunately for him, and hopefully he can make it to the end of this race in the position that he deserves, as Paul Millman gets the move done on Paul Brady. It's been a little bit of a disaster, has race 2 for Paul Brady, much like race 1, hasn't quite been able to score the points that I thought he'd be able to, given his pace in quantity around this season. He looked very competitive indeed. Unfortunately, this looks like it's just not going to be his day, which happens now and again. It is racing after all. It is a long season, and there's still plenty of opportunity to make some points later on. As we see, Will Inglis, having not led for so long this time round, already with that gap to the cars behind is standing at about 30 seconds. This really has been a Will Inglis masterclass. Speaking of masterclass, his technique has certainly provided quite a nice bit of pace to it, even with I imagine a relatively amount of downforce being carried on that car, given his current pace, a 290 kilometre top speed. So his car is absolutely flying, even with what must be a lower amount of downforce compared to the cars around him. I know he's very pacey indeed, but he can't quite make up 10 kilometres just through carrying a bit more momentum through the corners. As we see now, the drivers are occupying a nice bit of space on the track, looking like they are fairly comfortable in a bit of tarmac that they've occupied, with no major challenges at the moment by the looks of things. The closest two cars at the moment is Rob Whitney, or are rather Rob Whitney and Alan Matthews, as Rob Whitney trying to catch back up to Alan Matthews, and that will help him. A little bit of a dive onto the grass there brings Rob Whitney back into contention as we head into the penultimate corner now. Let's see what he can do. Will a little bit of desperation set in? I don't think so. Rob Whitney knows how to battle in a packet to get back onto the throttle, down the start finish straight once again. The gap standing at about half a second, much closer than it was at this stage on the previous lap. Rob Whitney certainly winning out in terms of previous lap pace that time round. Then heading into turn 1, then just a few tenths of a second down. Then this is doing quite nicely in the championship standings if he can get that move done. Currently P6, he'll be catching back up to Andrew Brammer if he can get this move done. This move really does matter, of course. Andrew Brammer and Rob Whitney, 2 of the cars, 2 out of the 4 or 5 cars not running a team name in the running this year. We haven't done an upload on the team names actually. I'll give a very brief interlude into the team names. In between the battling going on between Alex and Rob Whitney, we have Will Inglis battling for Thames Valley Racing, or Thames Valley. We have Alan Matthews battling for Kensington Sussex, Will Harper racing for HPR Racing, and then we have Paul Milton for Rock and Roll Racing. Very nice name indeed. It's all gone wrong for Alan Matthews. I was distracted by some frivolous team name things there, but Alan Matthews goes a little bit wide, enters the barrier pretty much, able to carry on, but has given the position back to Rob Whitney. That's exactly what Rob Whitney needed. As we head through turn 11 and turn 12, Rob Whitney will be cheering in his race seat, I am sure, as we head through sector 3 with Rob now up into P2. This will work wonders for him in the championship standings, especially as Andrew Brammer has had a bit of a race to forget, really. So Rob Whitney has certainly been rewarded, putting that pressure on for so long in that Tapeo liveried car there, and Partworld as well, and much certainly has been rewarded for putting the pressure on as we head down the start and finish straight. Starting with a lap with Rob Whitney now. Only 2 minutes ago in this race, and it's certainly been a race to remember for Rob Whitney all of a sudden, having fought quite hard, really done very well indeed to keep his position in this reverse grid race. Well done to Rob for a bit of a turnaround in fortunes compared to the first half of the weekend. And then we have my favourite, probably not with us tonight, unfortunately, Alex Smith for lightening the screen. Andrew Wright as well, very well. Names for his team: Boosted Motorsport, Boosted,
which sport, if you will. And then Matt Daly racing for Alfa Racer. We have Guy Swarbrick, John Baker also representing the Thames Valley team, along with race leader Will Inglis, as he comes across some lap traffic as well. Steve Knight for Wessex Racing and James Atkins for DHL as well. So just over a minute to go in the race, we are looking at Will Inglis trying to get the move done on Paul Milne, trying to get past this lap traffic. He sets the fast lap of the race so far, 32.3 heading into turn 1 at the moment. Then Paul Milne getting out of the way very courteously indeed. We don't have any of those rides, but it is excellent to see the drivers promoting and enjoying some great and fair racing. So this has been the weekend from heaven for Will Inglis, really, as we head through to sector 2 in a moment's time. About 40 seconds clear of P2 at the moment. Rob Whitney having taken P2 back from Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews very short, kicking himself at this point in time, as we have only 5 cars on the lead lap of this race so far. For what will be the final, the penultimate time rather, this evening. This Alpha Park circuit, which we are getting ready to enjoy with the new ground effect F1 cars this weekend. I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am, because if these ground effect cars offer the amount of racing action, the amount of overtaking action as much as these RSS Formula Supreme and the AROC Racing League's cars do, I'm sure we're in for a treat indeed. Doesn't look like it's going to be a particularly electric one from Will Inglis as he comes across the line for the penultimate time this evening, but it doesn't need to be. He wants to play it safe, keep calm, and not make too many errors, not make any errors at all actually at this point in time as he enters the final lap. Now I think we'll stay on board with him as he navigates this Alpha Park circuit for the final time this evening, heading down through to turn 3, one of the DRS zones here in the F1 world, using that push to pass system. Then in lieu of that, heading through turn 3, turn 4, and back onto the throttle. You have to be very careful not to ride over the sausage curve there. It's quicker to run a little bit wide, I find, but of course you ride over that sausage curve, you lose time, you lose grip, and you lose control of the car even as you head back onto the throttle for the run down towards turn 9 in just a few moments' time. He still has some lap traffic to contend with. That is James Atkins up in front. Currently in P5 it is James Atkins losing out. It was battling Rob Whitney at one point now. Further down the order in P5, I believe that was in collision with Paul Brady. Correct me if I am wrong. There, that dropped him down the order just a little bit as James Atkins courteously waiting there as we go on board with the leader. With this heading through turn 11, turn 12 for the final time this evening. Back onto the throttle. I imagine this might be a little bit of a push, a little bit of a celebration of what has been an excellent race for Will Inglis. Once again, an excellent qualifying session, an excellent race 1 as James Atkins runs a little bit wide there in the background. And as we head through the penultimate corner, he led qualifying, although that got taken away from him. You ignore that. Led race 1 back onto the throttle for the final time this evening, using that push to pass system for a flourish. It is Will Inglis who will be coming across the line for the race 2 victory as well. What a dominant performance from him in this weekend's running, taking the race 2 and race 1 victory with such a huge margin to the cars behind. Congratulations to Will Inglis for an excellent display and for making a little bit of progress in the championship standings as well. As we will go on board with Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney doing an excellent job in this race as well, to climb his way back up through the order when it looked like all might have been lost, reversing his fortunes a little bit in comparison to race 1, finding himself a spot on the podium, a well-deserved spot on the podium as he navigates the penultimate corner once again and comes round the final corner for what has been an end to a bit of a rollercoaster weekend for him, really, onto that push to pass system, coming across the line to take P2 as well. Well done to Rob Whitney. And as we saw in race 1, it's been a little bit quieter in the second half of this race for Will Harper, but he finds his way through the field quite nicely. A bit of a recovery ride for Will Harper to come across the line in P3. Well done, Will, for his spot on the podium. Once again, Alan Matthews taking home P4 as well. I thought he was under pressure there. That is the lap car of Paul Brady. James Atkins, the last car on the lead lap.
doing a very nice job of some decent points as well. Leading that AM race will be coming home in P5 as he navigates the final 3 corners with Willingless, the race winner, up in front of him as well. They're heading into the penultimate corner is James Atkins, still looking to make some headway into the championship standings. Despite his late start, he looks like he could be disturbing the order a little bit there. Has some pace underneath him, certainly does James Atkins, and comes across the line to take P5. Paul Milburn taking home P6, Paul Brady P7, John Baker P8, Guy Swarbrick P9, and Andrew Brammer P10, as we don't have quite as many victory donuts from Willingless here in race 2 to round out this evening's racing. But what an exciting evening's racing it has been, and I'm certainly looking forward to round 8 coming up in a fortnight's time. That is it from the action here from the AROC Racing Leagues at Alba Park, but of course you have more Alba Park action this evening, or this weekend rather, in the form of Formula 1 running. So if that is anything, if tonight's racing is anything to go by, it will be exciting indeed. I hope you very much enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed commentating, and I'll catch you in just a few